One of the most hotly contested races this election season is the Democratic primary for Hawaii's First Congressional District, representing urban Honolulu to Mililani and Ewa Beach. Join former Congressman Ed Case, Lieutenant Governor Doug Chin, State Representatives Beth Fukumoto and Kaniela, State Senator Donna Kim, and Honolulu City Councilman Ernie Martin for a live and spirited discussion on the issues affecting you. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
The primary election is August 11th, just 9 days from now. One of the biggest contests is to fill the congressional seat now held by Colleen Hanabusa, who did not seek re-election so she could run for governor. 13 people in various parties are running for this office, which represents urban Honolulu from Hawaii Kai to Mililani, Ewa Beach, and Kapolei. Tonight we feature 6 of the candidates facing off in the Democratic primary. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email, call, or tweet your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. As usual, we want to acknowledge our volunteers, PBS Hawaii friends and families who will be taking your questions tonight. There you see a live shot of them eagerly awaiting your input in our show. And now to our guests. Ed Case has served in Congress and in the State House of Representatives. Ernie Martin is currently the chairman of the Honolulu City Council. Doug Chin is currently Hawaii's Lieutenant Governor. Beth Fukumoto is in the State House. She left the GOP in 2017. Donna Mercado Kim chairs the Government Operations Committee in the State Senate, and Kaniela is the Majority Policy Leader in the State House. Now, before going any further, we do want to mention that there is one more Democrat in this primary election. He is Palasi Puletasi. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We want to start off with a question for all of you, and that is simply, why do this? A Gallup poll last month showed that just 17% of Americans approve of the job that Congress is doing. And the political divide in Washington, as we have all witnessed, can be quite toxic. So why jump into that? Ed Case, we'll start with you.
Well, I agree. I mean, I am very concerned at the standing of Congress in the eyes of the American people, and I think that it's broken. I think it's dysfunctional. I think there's incredible partisan divides, and one of my main reasons for running is I think I can do something about that, contribute to talking a little bit more and not fighting and yelling and working, getting solutions. That's number one. Number two, for me, Congress is about national issues, but also helping Hawaii. And we really need a strong team in Hawaii at all times. And I think I can contribute my experience and my expertise and my approach to helping the team there.
Okay, Doug Chin.
Oh, I agree with that. I mean, I think absolutely being able to work with the congressional delegation and to be able to make a strong stance to be able to represent Hawaii, I think is very important. But I think the other thing that is making people so interested in this race, and we're so grateful for all the people who are watching this on TV right now, is because this is the time of Trump. I mean, 2018 is a very, very different year from 2014, 2012. I mean, just as you go back. And I think it is absolutely critical that whoever is sent from the Democratic Party is someone who's going to be representing democratic ideals as well as upholding our democratic values that are so important to Hawaii.
Donna.
You know, I've always wanted to serve where I'm needed the most, and with the way things are in Washington, D.C. right now, partisan gridlock, it is really threatening our communities. It's threatening our fundamental rights and just our future. And so we really need a strong voice there, one that can be with reason, with civil discourse, which we need so badly there, but one that will also understand and knows the people of Hawaii and knows what's needed here, and that can represent their voice. It's not necessarily my voice, but it's the voice of the people, and that's something that I've done for my entire career in representing the people that have elected me.
Okay, Ernie Martin.
You know, I think if you take an assessment of most legislative bodies, you'll find that their approval rating is very low. You know, whether it's at the local, state, or at the federal level. I mean, it's not surprising. I think most people don't recognize the value of those who serve in elected office, primarily on the legislative side. I mean, congressionally, unfortunately, right now, publicity is pretty bad. I mean, because of the battles, not just with the administration, but internally, I think the different divisions within Congress itself. But I'm not interested in going up there and winning a popularity contest. I'm interested in going up there and representing our state, just like I've represented the county. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not self-accolades as to whether you did a good job or not. Your record will reflect that at the end of the day. And I think anyone who has an opportunity to serve, cannot forget the fact of who you are representing and not be concerned about your approval ratings, but getting the job done.
Beth, why do this now?
I think I looked at this race and I thought, opportunities like this don't come up that often. We need a voice for my generation in Congress right now. Half of my generation has already left for the mainland because we've not done a good enough job of making sure that we build an economy, an affordable housing market to keep people here, to make sure that people don't have to choose between having a family and living in Hawaii. And that's something that I just feel so passionately about. I do believe very strongly that this is not about Trump. This is not the year of Trump. This is the year for women stepping up and trying to do more for their communities, trying to be better voices than we've seen in the past. And that's what got me so excited to get involved, to be that voice for women, for my generation, for the people here in Hawaii that often feel like the establishment isn't paying attention to them. They feel disenfranchised. And so that's what got me excited. That's why I want to do this. And that's why it's so important to me that we really, really pay attention to getting new voices into Congress this year.
Kaniela, what's your view?
I absolutely believe that we need new voices, but it's not enough to just change politicians. I think people understand that there's systemic corruption in Congress, and that's the problem with both parties. Like, we can fight Trump all we want, but if we're taking money from the same people who's funding him, it's just fresh paint on an old machine. So that's why we're the only candidate, the only campaign who doesn't take any money from corporate PACs or lobbyists. So people know I'm standing with them. They said, Kaniela, that's impossible. How are you going to raise $300,000? We got 10,000 individual contributions. That smashes the district record by almost 8 times. So we're showing what's possible. Medicare for all, tuition-free college, 100% renewable energy future, housing for all. These things are possible. We don't have to wait 2 or 3 generations. We can demand it now. And the majority of people in Hawaii support these ideas, but big donors don't. So, we can all talk about our accolades and our resumes, but really, the answer's already there. We just got to cut that divide between the big donors and the people.
One thing that makes this show different than most is that you, the viewers, get to participate, and we already have a lot of questions coming in. Please do keep them coming. You can ask them to individual candidates or to the panel overall. So we have one here for Ed Case. We're getting questions about your voting record while in Congress. Could you clarify how you voted on funding for family planning, including Planned Parenthood? The viewer says they're asking this question because you could be casting a vote for the next Supreme Court justice.
Well, I wouldn't be casting a vote for the next Supreme Court justice because that's in the United States Senate, not in the U.S. House. But my record as far as women and family planning is that I'm rated 100% by Planned Parenthood, 100%, 100% by the National Organization of Women. So, frankly, when Beth talks about we need a woman to represent women and et cetera, I think that a U.S. congressman has to represent everybody in his or her district. If I'm elected, I need to represent men or women. I need to represent every single ethnicity, every single income level. It doesn't really matter. So in answer to the viewer's question, that's my record. My record is 100% in the support of women and in support of women's right to choose.
Okay, we want to ask this question a little more broadly. And Beth, actually, I'd like to start with you because you did mention economic anxiety here in Hawaii. Automation, of course, the elimination of American jobs, it's not just inevitable, it is happening right now. If elected, what legislation would you propose? What moves could we take to offset that?
So we had a resolution here in Hawaii in the legislature, and I signed on to it. It was a universal basic income proposal. I think that's a place to start. I think expanding Social Security to make sure that it is covering the basic needs for all, to make sure that people can afford their housing, especially here in Hawaii. We often create these programs for people to be able to afford things at a national level, but they can't afford it here locally because our cost of living is so much higher here. So looking at things like universal basic income, looking at other solutions to make sure that the companies that are getting rid of jobs, that are eliminating things that families rely on, are paying taxes to make sure that they're covering the needs that they're creating.
Would anyone else like to take that on?
Yeah, we've been talking about universal basic income since day one. If you give $1,000 to everyone in America, our economy would just boost by $3 trillion is the estimate. So it's one thing to have these split the baby policies of how do you transition people out of jobs, but it's another thing to actually solve the problem. And that, again, if you really want to push it, you got to speak against some of the donors, like these oligarchs, like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, and how 3 men have more wealth than 50% of all Americans. Another idea is a Green New Deal. It's a federal job guarantee that will transition folks away from coal and oil and into an advanced energy economy where we can reach 100% renewable energy by 2035.
A lot of your questions are actually directed to you tonight, and you did mention all the donations that you've received. But Alice is writing in to ask, given all the violations you admitted before the Campaign Spending Commission, how do Hawaii voters know that we can trust you if you get elected to Congress?
So I understand. That's a good question. Those were for my past races when I was running grassroots campaign as myself. I've apologized. I've taken ownership, so none of the blame falls on my treasurer or anybody on that campaign. We're paying the fine. And what wasn't reported in the media was that was discussed in the hearings, and actually the commission just agreed to, was that as soon as I saw the mistakes made in my bank account, I reimbursed it that same day, years before the inquiry even began. So the balance was actually only $40 at the end. So now we're moving on and fighting this systemic corruption because I am running against registered lobbyists in this race, like people who are taking millions of dollars directly from hotels, and those things didn't talked about at all. So let's all I can do is apologize and fix my mistakes and move forward.
Okay.
If I could add something here, I think one of the frustrations that I've had, Kaniela, specifically with your campaign, is that you're still making these mistakes. You're making mistakes on your FEC reports. You have not stopped making these mistakes, and you're still taking money from corporate donors and lobbyists. If you look at your records, Blake Oshiro, you said you returned it. We checked. You did not return it. He actually lobbies for pro-life groups. He lobbies for pharmaceutical companies. Those are lobbyists, and you're still taking their money, but you're blaming us for doing the same thing.
We raised $300,000 this race from 10,000 individual donors. The average is $30. It's never been done before this way. We saw. Technically, what we agreed to is no DC federal lobbyists, but every time we saw even a state lobbyist, we returned it.
But that's not what you're saying now. You're backtracking again, right?
How's that backtracking?
Because you're saying you originally said only DC lobbyists, but you took money from local lobbyists, and you said you returned it, and then you didn't.
No, the pledge was DC lobbyists, but even the state lobbyists, we're returning everything that we see. We're talking about tens of thousands of individuals.
Well, you said on your Facebook you returned specifically Blake Oshiro's money, and you did not.
I guess that's my concern. Let's move on to another issue.
How much? That was $250.
Maybe
right. You said none.
I think something that we should talk about that's important is that the concept of keeping secret money out of our races is really important. And I actually received the End Citizens United endorsement just last week, and that's partly because I'm a signature to the pledge of End Citizens United that we're not going to be.
Doug, you agreed to not take corporate PAC money 2 weeks before the election ended, so you already raised 90% of your income from your donations from big donors. A lot of lobbyists and corporations, and then in this last minute when it's all about spending at this point, then you take the pledge. Citizens United is like the democratic status quo now. That won't fix the money in politics problem. That's just super PACs. Corporate PACs will. And you lobbied for private prisons, and you collected over $100,000, and you're still taking money from private prison lobbyists today.
So I don't mean to pile on that, but I'm not taking money from private prison lobbyists. And back in 2015, you took money from 2 private prison lobbyists, Mihoko Ito and Gary Slovin. So during the time that you're saying that you were so against private prisons, you were taking money.
$100,000 personally. So we had these joint fundraisers, right, as our class, and they would give the minimum to get into the fundraiser to all of us.
I'm going to have to cut this off because we have so many viewer questions.
Let's talk about the issues itself.
Focus on the issues.
Donna,
I want to get your take on this. Do Americans have to accept the idea that mass shootings are just a part of our culture? Congress has done practically nothing. We've seen shootings in schools, kindergartners getting shot in schools. But no matter how bad these school shootings seem to get, gun control just doesn't seem to be able to pass, no matter who is in power. Do you have any specific new strategy or proposal on how to take this on?
Well, that's something that I would want to be at the top of my agenda. I would want to see us limit to age 21, that people that can get guns. Certainly we want to keep it out of the hands of young teenagers and so forth. A lot of these shootings have taken place on campuses. We need to have stricter review of background checks and so forth. We need to make sure that we take away the same kinds of laws that we have here in the state of Hawaii. I would like to see on the federal level. We need stricter gun control laws. We need to get rid of automatic weapons. We need to get rid of those devices that can turn these weapons into automatic weapons. And we just need to take a strong stance. And I've not taken a dime from NRA, and will never take a dime from NRA, and I am totally opposed to the guns and gun.
I see a lot of you nodding on that.
This is one of the critical issues in Congress. This indicates how dysfunctional Congress is, that it cannot pass reasonable gun control on a national level, similar, and I agree with Donna, to what we have here in Hawaii. Reasonable background checks, reasonable age restrictions, outright bans on assault weapons and bump stocks. I mean, you don't need those for anything. And my prior record on this, I got 100% from Planned Parenthood and National Organization of Women. The National Rifle Association gave me a 0 on this. So I mean, I'm very committed to this issue, and I think we all probably are very committed to this issue. So you're not going to get any disagreement. It's just who can kind of get it done.
Right, and I'd like to chime in on that because I've received the Moms Demand Gun Sense endorsement, as well as I also received an F from the Hawaii Rifle Association for my stance. And that's partly because as the chief law enforcement officer for the state, when I was the Attorney General, as well as a prosecutor, I have always advocated for the strictest gun control laws in our state. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Hawaii was able to boast last year that we had the lowest crime rate ever statewide since 1970s.
And we have a question for you tonight. Doug Chin, how much money did the state spend fighting the travel ban, and how come you didn't argue that case in court?
Sure. It was $150,000, and there was someone better who could argue it for me. It was Neil Katyal, who was the former Solicitor General under the Obama administration, who was much better equipped to be able to argue from the U.S. Supreme Court. And also I became Lieutenant Governor. So I was there. I got to sit with Senator Hirono as well as Karen Korematsu, the daughter of Fred Korematsu, who was in the Korematsu versus United States decision. And it was a very difficult argument to sit through, and it resulted in a 5-4 decision by a conservative majority. That's why I'm as concerned as I think everyone here in Hawaii is about the future of the U.S. Supreme Court and the need for us in Congress to be able to step up and take action against the president.
Ernie, I'd like to get your take on this question. Cannabis remains a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law, along with cocaine and heroin. Are you in favor of decriminalizing marijuana at the federal level? Why or why not?
I think that there needs to be a decision at the federal level. I think it's inconsistent with the direction that a lot of states are going. I see the economic potential in marijuana in terms of a cash crop for Honolulu, especially Hawaii. Hawaii is unfortunately known for its quality of marijuana. I think if we were to move in the direction of going just beyond marijuana for medical uses and allow limited use for recreational purposes, that's a discussion that should be had. But I think that needs to be discussed at the federal level because you have a lot of issues now. I know Doug, as Attorney General, has worked on some of those issues because of the fact that there is that cloud that hangs over a lot of medical marijuana establishments in terms of what they can and cannot do. But I would support that myself, although I don't use any. Any other hope?
Well, that's definitely not what we're asking. Donna, go ahead.
I wanted to add the fact that there's a lot of uses for marijuana, and additionally, hemp has been shown as a crop that can help Hawaii in many ways and add to the economy certainly. And I think the fact that having this disconnect with the federal as far as the cash and how these medical marijuana, and even for those states with recreational marijuana, and if should Hawaii go down there, is how do we deal with the cash and the banking and so forth, because the feds still look at marijuana as being a illegal substance, and that has to somehow change in order for us to make sure that we have a system that can take into the fact that these states are going into recreational marijuana.
The issue really here is a matter of federal versus states' rights. I really see it that way. I think that, and this indicates a key policy call that members of Congress have to make every single day. What are the areas where you need a uniform rule on the federal level? And what are the areas where you really need to let the states operate and the feds have to back out? I think in this particular area, the feds should not be handing down a one-size-fits-all rule on a national basis. They should allow states that want to legalize it to do so. I mean, California and Colorado are not falling off the rails. And I think that here, and I agree with Donna, the practical implications to medical marijuana industry here, from banking regulations that allow them no flexibility really to bank in the normal way, that the feds shouldn't be part of that.
I chaired the National Association of Attorneys General working group on marijuana, on cannabis, and it was a bipartisan group, 29 states, Republicans and Democrats, and I couldn't agree more with what Ed and Donna are talking about, because I think the real key from a law enforcement perspective is making it possible for banks to be able to work with legitimate marijuana industries, because that will allow law enforcement to be able to track and hold the legitimate players accountable, and also to be able to track any sort of dark money. That's all I want to say.
And I just want to add that, yes, state rights, but in order for states to even roll out a working medical marijuana program, this should be through the pharmacies, and you have to declassify it on the federal level, and it has to be uniform. So I'm not really sure, do you support declassification or not in the interest of states' rights?
I do. I believe the states should be able to make that decision.
So you support legalizing it on the federal level?
I believe that the federal level should not tell the states what to do in this area, and they should, where they have restrictions on it at the federal level that are preventing the states from making that decision, they should back off of those restrictions and let those states make those calls.
Right. Beth, we have a question for you. You answered a Civil Beat questionnaire saying, quote, Democrats are a party of fiscal responsibility, unquote. Yet you've been a Democrat for a little more than a year. Have you always felt this way? And if so, was that not deceiving when you ran as a Republican?
No, I think it's really important to say that fiscal responsibility should be every single party's concern. I think when we believe in spending money on programs, and I have looked at programs and said, yeah, we absolutely need to start spending money on things like critical infrastructure. We absolutely need to be spending more money on mental health. That doesn't mean that we're being fiscally irresponsible. I think we can be fiscally responsible. There are certain things that are fiscally responsible, like single-payer health care, like Medicaid for all, like making sure that everybody that needs a place to live has a place to live. That's responsible. It actually saves the state and the federal government money. We have proposals as Democrats that do save taxpayer funds. We just look at them in a different way than Republicans. But I think that it's wrong to continue down this road that only Republicans are fiscally responsible. Everybody wants to make sure that we are spending taxpayer money properly. And I think as Democrats, we want to make sure that we're spending it on the needs of the people instead of giving it to the rich.
Well, it's one thing to talk about fiscal responsibility and programs and looking at that, but when you're actually oversight, that's one of the things that we lack at the legislature, that I've been on the forefront of, looking at these programs, looking at these contracts and the things that are going on a daily basis, and the oversight as to what's being spent and what kind of contracts are being let and what kind of consultants are getting these jobs, and why is it that we continue to have contracts that are they go over the contract price, delays after delays after delays, and there is so much waste going on in government. And I don't see anybody going after these kinds of spending And so when we talk about fiscal accountability, I think that, I'd like to see more of that going on, and that's something that we need in Washington as well.
Dennis from Twitter has a question for all of you. If elected and Democrats regain control of the House, will you support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker? Are there any of you who would not support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker?
Well, I'm not ready to make the decision. So the answer is I don't know yet, because first of all, I really don't know who the candidates are going to be. I know Nancy Pelosi. I like her. I respect her. I voted for her twice as Speaker. But, I think this is a time when Democrats need to step back and ask ourselves, what kind of leadership do we need going into the next generation? I believe that the reason that Democrats have lost the presidency and lost the majority in Congress is because they've lost touch of the middle of America, the middle politically, certainly the middle geographically. And if Democrats don't regain that touch, that earn the mantle of leadership from the middle of America in that sense, then we don't deserve to be the leaders. And so that's what I would take into the discussion of who the next speaker is, or minority leader for that matter.
Organizing your caucus is something that takes a lot of learning who the people are and understanding what they're going to do and what kind of leader they're going to be. And I think we need a leader for the Democrats, whether we take over or not, that's fair, that's going to have transparency, that's going to allow the members to be able to be free as to what are the things that they're going to pursue. And sometimes when you have these leaderships, they put a gag order on you, or they say you have to follow the party line, or you have to follow exactly the way the caucus is going. And I think we need leaders in Congress that's going to be a lot more progressive, a lot more open to allowing us that freedom.
So is that a no on Nancy Pelosi?
Well, no, it's I've got to know, like Ed said, who are the candidates? And I don't know Nancy Pelosi. I've not met her. I don't know what she stands for. I read about her, and you can't believe everything that you read. And certainly she's been a leader all these years, and she's done a great job. But certainly there are new leaders coming up, and we need to look at everybody and consider that.
Yeah, I would say we're not sure what the options are, and I think that's what we're all saying. We're not sure what the options are yet. I will say that I am leaning against Nancy Pelosi. I will be looking for another option. I think that she has been overly tied to some corporate interests in the past, and I think some of the decisions that were made at a congressional level were made because they were too heavily influenced by donors. And I would like to look for somebody that's looking to try to change that has a little bit more of an anti-establishment voice, that wants to really push new agendas in Congress. So that's what I would be looking for. But at the end of the day, we need to see who our choices are.
I think the focus is getting elected first and foremost.
Right.
And then we make a decision.
Well, on that topic,
on the issue of fiscal responsibility in a Republican Democrat, you're talking about a Republican administration who wants to spend billions on a border wall. Spending billions on a border wall when you get seniors and veterans on the streets every day starving, living under decrepit conditions, lack of medical care, all of those issues, lack of housing accommodation. So, who's to say that Republicans are fiscally responsible? I think Beth saw the light and knows that the brighter side is on the Democratic side.
$1.5 trillion on tax cuts to the rich and the big banks, Wall Street. That same money could have went to cancel all student debt in this nation and actually give our generation a shot. If we can afford to bail out big banks and Wall Street and give them golden parachutes after they crash our economy, then we can afford to stop the next recession from happening.
I actually think that's a really good point, because I think that it's the tax cuts that eventually threaten Social Security and Medicare, which are the very type of entitlement programs that we want to make sure that we're protecting.
Ernie Martin, we have a question for you tonight. You've expressed an interest in running for the mayor of Honolulu. That seat opens up in just 2 years. Why run for Congress now? Why not focus on that race?
For me, of course, I've been in the county. I'm fortunate to have served for quite a long time, both levels, executive branch at very high levels, and now at the council itself. Definitely, but to me, serving at the federal level is no different than serving at the county level. I've had the experience, I think, both serving on the executive branch and county branch, working with the federal government quite intimately. So, I have that level of experience. But I think, whether it's at the local, state, or federal level, I think all of us who sit here on the table have a sincere desire to serve our state. And this is an opportunity, a unique opportunity, I think, for all of us to move on and continue to provide for our constituency. It's very challenging times. You know, I think being at the county, being at the real grassroots level, I think more than any elected official, you see firsthand some of the challenges that are occurring. I mean, you have all these complex issues at the federal level, some of them that demand our attention, but at the end of the day, I mean, people are starving on the streets. People are going without medicine. You know, those are basic needs that the federal government should take responsibility for. And in some degree, I agree with Kaniela. I mean, some of the focus of the federal government in benefiting big businesses that can survive without without the incentives that have been provided for them, I mean, could go to better use to serve those who really need those services.
So does that mean you're not running for mayor in 2 years?
No, I plan to be in Washington. How's that?
Fair enough. Donna, in a recent article, you wrote you want to work with colleagues of all parties to bridge the divide in Congress, but you have been described as heavy-handed when holding power positions. How would you bring civility to Congress?
You know, people have elected me to fight for them, and they call that a heavy hand. I really disagree with that in the sense, because in order to be able to work with people, I've been able to, as Senate President and as Chair of Ways and Means, as well as Chair of a number of other committees, bring people together. And I think that's really important. And heavy-handedness have come in holding people accountable. And I think that's something that we need more of. And part of that reason is that after being in position for 30 plus years, you hear the same excuses over and over from the bureaucrats, from department heads, and I hold them accountable. And if you call that heavy-handed, then that's something. But as far as working with my colleagues, I can show you, according to my record, time and time again, where we have come together and been able to save people's homes. We've been able to put programs together, and we've been able to move the state forward. And so those are the kinds of things that I will continue to do in Washington. And I've pledged that if I'm elected, that I will introduce and meet every single member of Congress, look at them face to face, make sure they understand what Hawaii is all about, what are our needs, and make sure that we can have alliances to help the state of Hawaii.
And I think one of the things that we've been learning is that calling someone heavy-handed might not have been the case if it was a man who was going through that. So I should just point that out. But I think for all of us, I mean, that's going to be very important that we are able to work with the other members of Congress and to be able to work with our own congressional delegation. I was the chair of the Western region of the Attorneys General from 2016 to 2017. I was elected to that by Republican and Democrat states from the western part of the United States. And it was a great honor just to be selected by my colleagues from all the different states to be able to represent them.
Here's the secret on working with your colleagues in Congress, because there's a lot of colleagues in Congress. And this is a trick that was taught to me by my former boss, the U.S. Senator Spark Matsunaga. You give them all macadamia nuts on their birthday.
I think that's
and you send them a little card saying,
Ha'oli
Lahana. And you would be surprised at how many of them that you don't really know come up to you on the floor and you say, you're the representative from Hawaii. Thank you so much for the macadamia nuts. So my pledge here tonight is to continue that tradition.
I like the Mac Nut Congressman.
That always works.
Kaniela, this question is for you from Nancy in Kailua. She wants to know, as a conservative, how can she be represented in Congress if you are elected? You know, you've distinguished yourself as, you've attempted to distinguish yourself as the most progressive of this panel. So as someone who's conservative, how will you represent her?
I'm like my colleagues, I'm willing to work with anyone who's willing to fight with me for working families in Hawaii. We don't always agree with everything. Like with my colleagues who endorsed me, like Sylvia Luke, like Takashi Ono, we don't see eye to eye on every issue. Oftentimes they're much more conservative than I am. But you just show some aloha. There's ways that you can vigorously fight for things that you believe in, but still do it with a matter of respect and aloha. And that's what we've been doing. It's why I have just got endorsed by Pramila Jayapal, who revealed that horrendous human rights atrocity that's been happening at our borders by ICE agents. It's the reason why I'm endorsed by Ro Khanna and a whole list of groups that are not just supporting progressives, because it's not always left and right. I think what we're seeing right now is the bottom coming for the top, and just asking that this handful of wealthy elites pay their fair share, and these corporations are lobbyists, and that speaks to people everywhere. As long as an area has working people and middle class people struggling to get by, like that message resonates.
You know, one of the things I don't like about these kinds of forums, it's everything is, what do you think, you know, where do you stand on these issues? And for me, it's where the people stand. And we're just the voice. I'm just the voice, the conduit for the people. And so it should be, we should be here listening to what the people want and what we need in Washington, D.C. And I think that's the fallacy on some of these times that you ask us all these questions, where do you stand? And then throw a question out there, well, how are you going to represent the conservatives? Mm-hmm. But you do that by listening to the people and understanding and being part of the community so that you can be sure that we are representing the majority.
Well, you know, we are a state of immigrants, so on that, you know, you would be representing quite a few immigrants if you did go to Washington. President Trump's immigration policies have stirred a lot of debate, outrage, praise, depending on what side of the aisle you're on. At its core, reforms are needed in immigration. Ed, we'll start with you. Where do you stand on the idea of immigration reform, and how can that actually become a reality?
We need comprehensive immigration reform. It's one of the primary issues that has been hung up in the dysfunction in Washington, so I believe strongly that it's timely, it's way overdue. It has been decades since we last had comprehensive immigration reform, and to me there are three elements to immigration reform. A, to expand legal immigration, including allowing people who have been sitting on lists for years, even decades, to come into this country legally. To come in at this point. B, we have to have some degree of border security, because I don't believe in just open borders. I believe in an enforcement mechanism at our borders. Any country should do that. And C, a path to citizenship for those that are in our country technically illegally right now, including DACA recipients. And so you've got to have all three of those. If you only have one plank, but not the other two, if you have two and not the other one, you are not going to have comprehensive immigration reform in this country, and we need it all. And I'm hoping that there's been so much discussion of this in the congressional elections this year that many, many members will go back to Washington with a recommitment to try to get immigration reform across the finish line. And I think it can be done. I think frankly, the dam is breaking there. And I think that people are ready to have that kind of immigration reform.
Doug, what do you think?
I'm also hopeful that Republicans and Democrats are ready to have that talk next year, especially after what we're all got our fingers crossed for the next year's election. For the viewer who is asking about immigration, and for anybody else who cares about this issue, I would respectfully submit that if I had the opportunity to be in Congress, as the Attorney General who sued President Trump on the travel ban, I could be a national voice in this area and really be able to share Hawaii's story and make sure that we are standing up for Hawaii's values. So for me, I think one of the key priorities is to make sure that we are protecting family reunification, just allowing, because that is just such a key thing for immigrants that come to Hawaii, is that they're able to bring in their relatives into the United States. I think the other thing is to make sure that we are abolishing the abusive, unconstitutional, and illegal portions of ICE, but then also looking and keeping the portions of ICE that are helpful in terms of stopping human trafficking and being able to protect women and children. So that's another issue that's out there, and I think it does need to be looked at very carefully.
I mean, Donna, Doug does raise a good point. A lot of Democrats have been calling for ICE to be abolished. Do you think that ICE should be abolished?
Yes, I do. And you know, you don't have to be sue Trump in order to have a national voice or be on the national level. As Doug has said, certainly I think all of us here can, in fact, be on that level to look at immigration. And I certainly agree with Ed that we do need all three levels, and we do need enforcement, I think, and we also need to acknowledge that those people who have applied legally to come into our country, that they should be given the priority as far as following the rules. And you know, we are a country of laws, and if we're not going to abide by our laws, if we're not going to abide by our policy, that's something that we really need to look at. And so we really need reform when it comes to immigration, and then allowing a pathway for citizenship.
You know, I agree with Donna. I think, you know, any one of us here would be a strong voice on this particular issue. And I agree with Ed. I think the time is right. I think the issue right now is at the forefront. This is now, unfortunately, not a Democrat or Republican issue. You know, I think the embarrassment of the Trump administration in separating children from their families now is creating an atmosphere where people are very upset, you know, and very embarrassed by this course of action. So I think, you know, we need to capitalize on the fact that people are upset. And the momentum is building, I think, for true immigration reform that can provide a pathway for those who deserve to become citizens of our country. Hey, all of us are immigrants right here sitting on this table, unless you can tell me you full-blooded Native Hawaiian, which I know Kaniela is Native Hawaiian. I'm Native American, I'm American Indian, but I'm only part. You know, the rest of my family were immigrants. All of us, you know, on this table came from that type of background. So any one of us going to be a strong champion on this particular issue.
And I want to talk about being a national voice, because we were one of the first campaigns to talk about abolishing ICE, and we don't need it. We didn't need it before 2003, and we don't need it now. It was a George W. Bush scapegoating tactic to justify the Iraq War, just like the Patriot Act was. The Patriot Act that you supported, Mr. Gase. You know, we need not just DACA, but to pass a Clean Dream Act. And it's one thing to just talk about these issues that we care about, and we should actually look at our records, though, because whether it was our sanctuary state bill or the bill that the love of my life, Cara, and I wrote to give driver's license to undocumented immigrants, or the abuses of slave-like practices at our docks, these are all record issues that I championed in the state house, and our attorney general actually was against. So, you know, it's one thing to talk the big game now, but it's another thing to actually stand up when it matters.
Beth, do you think it's realistic to abolish ICE, and how can that be part of the conversation about immigration?
So yes, I think it is realistic. I happen to agree with Kaniela. There are plenty of other ways and other avenues to make sure that human trafficking and other things that ICE does are taken care of. I think that a lot of the reforms he's talking about, I do completely agree with, and I want to agree with both Donna and Ernie here that I think anybody at this table can make a good argument and be somebody on the national stage to talk about immigration, specifically immigration in Hawaii. My grandparents were immigrants to Hawaii. We've been here for multiple generations living that immigrant story, and I do believe that we can all be advocates on that level, and I think it's especially important on such a controversial issue like this. Whoever is there to advocate is not just there to be on a national stage. You have to be there and be able to work in a legislature where the best argument doesn't always win. You have to talk to people behind the scenes. You have to work with people. You have to come up with good ideas and know where to make the compromises and where to make different talking points. For me, what I'd like to see us do, and something I think we could make progress on, is to start talking about immigration as an economic issue instead of an issue of race or ethnicity. If we can move it to that and talk about how immigration actually improves our economy, builds more jobs, makes it easier for our families to live, it can help us lower the cost of living. Let's talk about that, because we can all get on board with that, and that's a good way to try to pass reform that's bipartisan.
The caller here is tired of the turnover in our congressional delegation. So if elected, will all of you pledge to stay in the House and build seniority before running for higher office positions?
I'm 52 years old, and so God willing, I'll have 25 years left ahead of me. And if I had the opportunity to go to Congress, then I'd be committed to that. And really the opportunity to be able to build seniority, I think is important. And I hope I get that chance.
I've stated on the record that should I be elected, that I have pledged that I will stay in the House and that I will not run for Senate or not come back and run for something else, because I really think that it's very important that we have continuity, that we have somebody that can unify our delegation together. And when you have people running against people, as we've seen for positions, then there's a tendency for them not to want to work together. And we certainly want that with our delegation, because there's only 4 of us there. And so certainly that's my commitment, that I will stay there as long as the people will allow me, and I make my commitment here and now.
I think on the issue,
the callers the same assurance.
No, I can't. You know, I've become really reluctant to give absolute pledges in my political life. You don't know what's going to happen down the road. What I pledge to do is stay in the House as long as the voters want me there, and as long as I think that's the best contribution that I can make. And I don't have any plans for running for anything else. So the likelihood is yes. But you know, to make a pledge like that, and it's so easy to make pledges. You know, oh well, I changed my mind 4 years from now. I'm not going to do that. You know, it's just a game to me.
Well, it's not a game to me. I've made my pledges and I've held them, and that's one of the reasons why I've been in my position, because the people know that when I make a commitment, my commitment stands, and I make that commitment now.
Beth, I can hear you jump in on that.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember when we're talking about continuity, that we're also talking about the ability to build seniority. And if you look at the two people that, we've had many good representatives in Congress, but the two people that really did the most for our state, I would say, are Senator Inouye and Representative Mink. They did a great job, but part of it is because they were elected at 35 and 37. There's plenty of time to build that seniority. People look at us now, and I know both Kaniela and I hear people say we're too young. No, we're not. We're exactly the right age. This is the age that people sent Patsy Mink to Congress. It's the age that we sent Dan Inouye. This is the age where you can make change and have that time to build that seniority and build that influence to bring things home for Hawaii over the long term. So absolutely, I would commit to staying there.
But
we're
they
also
didn't
like
necessarily-
5 to 10 years older than the founders of the United States.
But they didn't
right?
necessarily stay in the House of Representatives. So that was the question, whether you would stay in the House, because they went on to the Senate.
And I'm perfectly happy to stay in the
The reason
House.
why
Yeah.
there's 6 of us here is because they built 40 years of seniority. So you have 3 generations. You have the boomers, the Xers, and the millennials running for these 2 seats. So, you know, we have the opportunity to build that power up again. And the stakes are high for this generation. It's not like it was a generation ago where you can get out of high school and buy a home. It's $800,000 now. So you got to be making $200,000 to be on track. And meanwhile, we're building these luxury condos.
Every generation feels that way, and because of that seniority.
Well, but the numbers don't lie.
The numbers
don't
yes.
lie.
Right.
I'm not saying it's lying.
Decisions have been made over, with all due respect. You've been running for office before I was born. I admire your years of public service, but the decisions that have been made over the last 30 years have not been forward-thinking enough. They've been too focused on making the donors happy and not enough representative of the people. Like Medicare for All. All 3 of you told lobbyists that you wouldn't support Medicare for All. But you're telling
That's
the
not
people.
true.
That's not
Kaniela.
true.
I never
That's
told
not
anybody that. Come on.
Well, there's an
Wait,
article
Kaniela,
about the
that's
Intercept.
misleading.
Yeah,
On the Intercept.
I read the article, Kaniela, and I thought you were going to bring this up. It doesn't say in there that I talked to any lobbyists about this, so correct it right now. Okay, there's your opportunity.
Yeah, I'll correct it. All 3 this way.
No,
I don't think you're
misleading
right.
as well, but let's get back to
Let's
the
get back to this.
Right.
Well,
It's on record.
another
this-
important
this
thing
is
that I
a-
think
get a chance
is
to
important
speak.
to add here.
Let me
Don't
speak on
throw
this.
stuff on the wall
That's
and
not-
hope it's going to stick.
No, this is-
That's not the way you conduct yourself
This was
as
a
member of
reputable
Congress.
journalist, and this was an organization that you folks all met with. Not you.
I didn't
You weren't
meet
in the
with
race
them.
yet. You weren't in the race yet. so
Okay,
you don't-
thank you, Kaniela, and I haven't met with them since.
But one thing, the one pledge you did
article
make,
did not
one pledge
say
you
that.
did make a couple years ago is that you wouldn't, that your time in public office was over, and you wouldn't be seeking.
You know, I want to talk
Okay,
on
let's get
both
back.
issues real quick.
Let's get
I mean,
and Ernie, we're going to ask you
quick.
the same question because
On
that's
the
another way for us to ask
service
if you're going to run
seniority.
for mayor in 2 years.
but you know, the fact of the matter is, I'm glad you asked that question because a lot of people think I'm leaving the city council to run for this office. Actually, I served my commitment. We only can serve 2 terms. I've served 2 full terms. So it shows that I've committed to the responsibilities that the voters voted me for. Regards to the House of Representatives in terms of building seniority, I mean, you know, I don't think of it that way. I think that, you know, when voters elect you, they expect you to be effective from day 1, not in year 10, in day 1. And, you know, that's always how I prided myself. You know, with regards to serving in perpetuity, only a Supreme Court justice can serve in perpetuity. None of us can. The voters will ultimately decide that. I serve as long as I can be effective. But you know, part of this discussion is kind of steering away, and you know, people always ask me, why don't people vote? You know, why don't people vote? Because when they see people disagreeing with each other in these types of forums, you know, they get turned off. It's like, geez, you know, you talk about Congress being dysfunctional and being divisive, and the 6 of you sitting here, all local brothers and sisters, and you guys cannot even get along.
Well,
You
you're
know,
all
so-
very passionate. I mean,
there's a difference between passionate and being personal. I think sometimes you border on taking it the next level. You know, I've been an athlete my whole life. I've been in situations where we were taunt our opponents, but that was part of the game. You know, you don't go and follow them into the locker room after and take it all personally. But sometimes I think people perceive that passion from taking an attack personally, you know, and it turns voters off. I mean,
well, I've seen each of
it's
you
very
pledge to
embarrassing.
not have a negative campaign.
I don't
Ed,
do
how you feel
negative
like this
campaigning.
race
I don't criticize anybody.
I mean, I'm
No,
sure Ed is there.
No, I mean, I agree with that, and I mean, I actually like when I think about Kaniela, and since we're at the end of our campaign that we've all been together on, I actually think Kaniela, you're a better candidate when you're introducing and talking about your Democrat socialist agenda. I mean, I think that's actually interesting for the
We
voters,
talk
but
about Medicare for
I think
all.
when you're attacking
So
the other opponents.
When somebody says, like, when I talk about why people don't want to vote for, get involved in politics, it's when we say something to the public, then we say something else to lobbyists. So when that gets pointed out in an article, like, yeah, I'm going to talk about it, because that's exactly why so many people in our generation are over it.
Yeah.
Because the people want these things. We want Medicare for all. We want tuition for college. All these things are possible. The only reason why anybody says it's not possible, all these entrenched politicians, is because they don't mean impossible, they mean inconvenient for their donors.
What we're just saying is you're better off when you're not attacking everybody.
What
I'm just saying,
I'd
you're
like
better off when
to-
you're not
if
lying
I
to
could
the
add
public about
something
your support for
here.
Medicare for all. When you say lobbyists, you're going to kill it.
But see, Kaniela, you
give Beth-
contradict yourself, right? Here, when you was asked about the issue with the Campaign Spending Commission, you specifically stated that the full story did not come out in that article. How do you know for a fact what was reported in the Interceptor was the fact at hand? You don't know.
Right.
You don't know. You don't know the facts. You wasn't there, right? How you know?
I saw the dossier
Like you was
that
misquoted.
came from your meeting with the lobbyist, and then we heard your statements in Hawaii News Now.
Well,
Well,
that
we wanna
doesn't
get-
necessarily make it true.
So I have I
cannot go there,
think
man. You
to
cannot
bring
have
it
it both
back
ways.
to the original conversation we were having about the economy, about the differences in the generations and the costs that we're facing. I think we were talking about that. I think one of the biggest things, I mean, Kaniela mentions Medicare for all. One of the biggest things is the cost of housing, and that the legislature has had a generation to make it cheaper. Our generation can actually not afford to live here. We can't do it. Things have gotten that much out of hand. And I would disagree with Donna. Fine, every generation has struggled, but they've struggled and made it through. We are not going to make it through if we don't change things. One of the things that we need to change is that we are not taxing luxury developments. We're not taxing out-of-state investors that come in here and vacant units that take up all of the housing that could go to local people. And there have been plenty of places over time and plenty of pieces of legislation that I personally have pushed that have gotten blocked by establishment politicians because of the donors that they take.
Okay, I have
These
to cut you
affordable
off. I
housing
have to
projects are
cut you
written
both
by
off there
luxury
because we
developers.
only have a few minutes left, and so you each have about 30 seconds, and I will hold you to that because we want to hear from each of you, and we will get cut off. What is the single biggest issue facing our country today, and how would you personally work to fix it? Ed, we'll start with you.
We've already talked about it at length. The single biggest issue is dysfunction in Congress and in our federal government. The single biggest issue is the inability of our national government to work for the betterment and for the benefit of all Americans. And this results from a number of factors: partisan politics over the top, secret dark money from insider special interests that I do believe need to be reformed. And if we don't get a handle on the particular inadequacies in our government, we are not going to solve our larger problems. We're not going to have these great policy debates that have come up just a little bit here tonight. My commitment is to go to Washington and find the people that believe the same way that I do and to work with them to find a better discussion, a better decision-making process for our government.
Okay, Doug.
I'm grateful to all the people who are the voters and the people who've been helping all of us in our campaigns, because like all of us, I think they just care about not taking the country for granted anymore. And I feel like there are some existential threats that are facing our country right now, which is the reason why I jumped into this race. I'm not a career politician. I'm an attorney general. I'm a prosecutor. But I just believe that that is exactly what we need in Washington, D.C. right now in 2018. And that's why I'm running. And I have so much aloha for all the opponents here. I just feel like I'm the right person to be there.
Donna, what do you think is the biggest issue facing our country?
I happen to agree with Ed. I think the dysfunction that's going on, I think we need civil discourse, and we need to come together, and we need to bring some common sense reform to Congress. We need to have people there that is look realistically. You can sit here and talk about doing this or doing that, but at the end of the day, you have to get the majority of the votes. And you can talk about having served for so long, but some of my colleagues, they've served a short time, but they still haven't been able to make any inroads, because you got to remember, at the end of the day, it's the people that elect the people that you have to work with, and you have to be able to work with them, and you have to have compromise, and you have to start somewhere and move forward. And that's what we have to do, take these steps forward together so we can move ahead and not be at a standstill that we're at right now. And that's something that I plan to do in Washington.
Kaniela, what's your take?
Yeah, it's dysfunction, but it's not just because people aren't nice to each other. I don't think that's at the root of the problem. It's the systemic corruption that exists when lobbyists and corporations buy out our politicians on both sides. My opponents had to look look back at like Mihoko Ito's contribution from back in the day, or maybe one we missed when trying to refund everything back. But like we're the only campaign who's doing it like it's never been done before, $30 average. Now, maybe I did take money in my past race. It was a small percentage of it, but it was before like this whole Bernie, like so did Obama, so did Bernie Sanders. And then we saw what happened in 2016. And it's like, you know what, maybe we can do it completely unmoored from corporate donors. And we're proving that it's true. We smashed the record of individual donors by 8 times. So you know what, if we don't take NRA money, we can actually fight school shootings. If we don't take corporate polluter money, we can actually fight climate change. If we don't take money from insurance companies and these, these care corporations, then we can actually give healthcare for all. And if we don't take money from luxury developers who've been buying out our politicians here in this island since before I was born, then we can actually provide housing for all.
Okay, we got to give Beth a chance here.
Yeah, I think it's that people feel disenfranchised. I think that's the biggest problem right now in Congress is that people, not just my age, voters all over the place feel like they're disenfranchised, that people aren't presenting their voice. And that's why I'm so concerned about corporate donors, as Kaniela likes to say, but about the other special interests, the mainland special interests that come in here and bring teams in here to knock on doors to try to change the state of Hawaii with their own perspectives. I think it's incredibly important that every single one of us here turn down those people and say we are here for the people of Hawaii and we want to pay attention to the concerns that they have. I think that we can make sure that we make a difference for people and that they can really believe in government again. If we can show them that we understand that in the morning, they might have watched CNN the night before, but in the morning they weren't thinking about immigration. They weren't thinking about foreign policy. They woke up and they checked the traffic, and they want to make sure that we understand what they need.
My time already.
We got to give Ernie Martin the last word.
Oh man, thank you. The council chairman always has the last word. But let me take it a little differently. For me, it's really simple. I think America is known to be the country it is because of who we are. I think we've gotten away from what makes our country so great. I'm ashamed to be in a position where I see our veterans who go away and serve our country and come home and there's nothing for them. Who fall into, who are not able to get a job, not able to get a roof over his head. I mean, many have fallen victim to drug abuse, living on the streets. I mean, even our seniors, I see them being challenged every day. We need to get back and remember, why we are the great country we are, and take care of our own first and foremost.
We're going to have to leave it there. I apologize. We could talk all night. Mahalo to you for joining us. And we, of course, thank tonight's Democratic candidates for U.S. Representative District 1, Ed Case, Douglas Chin, Donna Mercado Kim, and Ernie Martin, Beth Fukumoto, and Kaniela Ng. Next week on Insights, we'll wind up the primary election season with 2 neighbor island races. First, from 8 to 8:30, the candidates in the Democratic primary for Senate District 3, Kailua Kona to Na'alehu, Drew Kanuha, and Brenda Ford. Then from 8:30 to 9, the 3 candidates for the West Maui seat on the Maui County Council, Tamara Palton, Rick Nava, and Kanamu Balenbin. Please join us next time. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui ho.